Now, most economists agree a recovery in the housing market is central to a rebound in the economy and to the credit markets. Joining us now, Stanford University professor John Taylor. He's also a former Undersecretary of the Treasury for International Affairs, and he's an economic advisor to Senator John McCain. And John Taylor, welcome.
It's good to be here, it really is.
Listening to all the post-debate chatter last night, seemed to be a pretty widespread view that John McCain at least held his own. Maybe some people say even better than that last night. The question we really want to focus in on is his plan for bailing out housing. And you just heard Alan Blinder, basically a colleague of yours in the economics profession, saying he doesn't like the McCain plan because he thinks it's not a good idea to buy mortgages up at their original value. What do you say to Alan Blinder?
Well, let's agree that we need to do something. I think Alan has been very specific about dealing with the foreclosure things and the declining home prices, and that's what John McCain wants to address. He recognizes that until you stop those prices from falling, until you deal with the foreclosure problem, this crisis is going to continue. So that's his most important point here, and to get a way to do it rapidly, right? Get in there, start purchasing the mortgages, start giving people an opportunity to work out to a better rate. Now, if Alan is complaining about one particular part of it, I'm not quite sure, but it's an idea that Hillary Clinton really put forward at one point in time. It's an idea that we used during the Great Depression, and it worked well then. And it seems to me that that's really what we want to focus on, and that's what John McCain has laid out and given the economic rationale for it, and given a very specific program. And it's not part of the rescue package now, but I think it should be. Well,
but let's get specifically, and you're the professor, so you understand this a lot better than me, and I'm sure most of my viewers. In fact, Alan Blinder brought up the HOLC, the Home Owners Loan Corporation, which bought them at the depressed value, and then when the homes were sold, and a lot of people proposed something like this: write down the value of the mortgage or refinance part of it, give the homeowner some relief, and then if the homeowner sells at a higher price, you can take some of the money back, but you don't want to buy the mortgage at its on the books value if it's underwater now.
Well, what you want to do is get the mortgage in the hands off the homeowner's balance sheet so that they can start staying in their home and not do the foreclosure, and then you want to work out so they have a lower interest payment. And so one way you can do that is actually charge a lower interest rate. Now, as you know, treasuries are really quite low. The government can borrow at a lower rate, but the spreads between mortgage rates and treasury rates are still high, so the government can have a lower rate on those mortgages and still earn money, still make money. So it is definitely something, there's a potential gain here for the taxpayers. But the most important thing is to keep people in their houses so you don't have this foreclosure and downward spiral problem, which is still really at the heart of the financial crisis. So there's room there of getting those rates down and extending the payment period where interest rates are right now.
What about, let's take this more broadly and more of the moment in terms of the bailout plan for the banks, which is now the latest, injecting capital directly, and some other measures, this TARP, buying up distressed securities. What part of the plan do you like? What part of the plan don't you like?
Well, I think it's got to involve all these things, quite frankly. The banks have to have more capital so they can make loans. They are holding these securities which are uncertain, toxic as it's caused. And plus there are these whole mortgages out there that need to be readjusted so that they don't feed back into the banking system. So really all three parts of this are important. But in some sense the key here is the thing that John McCain keeps mentioning. The key here is the actual borrowers who are holding those mortgages can make the payments, sometimes go into default, sometimes a foreclosure, and that feeds back into the securities that the banks are holding. And that's the heart of the what's clogging up the financial system. So you got to deal with that part. The other two are important too, but you've got $700 billion to work with, and this part of it, the actual helping the homeowners, has got to be in there.
The $300 billion, I believe, that McCain would allot to this, isn't that using up too much of the bailout package?
I don't think so, but we have to see how it goes. I think it's, you're talking about 250, I guess it is, for the banks at this point. We'll see how much of that is actually used by the banks. But the $300 billion is something that could go a long way, maybe address as many as 10 million homeowners and their possible foreclosures. So I think it's a place to begin, but do it quickly. Don't wait 60 days. Implementation, we can't really spend a lot more time on this. It's too much harm to the economy.
Haste makes less home foreclosures. That's what I'm trying to say. John, I want to keep you around a little bit longer. We'll get some more thoughts from John Taylor, advisor to John McCain's presidential campaign, in just a moment. So we're back with Professor John Taylor. And John, I want to ask you, we were talking a lot about the McCain plan, but I want to ask you for your view as an economics professor, researcher, scholar. Where are we in this cycle? How bad is it going to get? Because people say, for example, that if this bailout doesn't work, if we don't get it right, something like a depression could happen. I used to think a couple weeks ago I was being a fearmonger, but I've heard too many people mention this.
Well, it's going to get worse before it gets better. There's no question. The financial system is now clogged, and there's a credit crunch. So, but I think when you make comparisons to the past, let's keep the financial crisis as comparable, or as the worst we've had since the Great Depression. But the idea that that will extend more broadly, I think, we can prevent that actually if we take some good policy actions. And it's not just the plan that's on the table, as we were talking about before. You got to deal with this downward spiral of home prices, was what John McCain wants to focus on now.
And you're an advisor to the McCain campaign, and I'm going to give you a chance to explain what his administration would do for the economy, which is facing a deep recession, this financial crisis, and needs to act fast.
He's out there every day talking about the economy and how tough it is and what we can do. So his plan is very specific. First, you want to give a broad set of tax relief to the middle class, and he does that through health care tax credit as well as an exemption for families with children. Then he wants to reduce the tax rates on businesses so that they can create jobs. As you know, the U.S. has a second highest tax rate in the world, 35%, and so there's these incentives for firms to create jobs elsewhere. So he wants to deal with that as well. So it's a comprehensive plan. These are some of the examples, some of the parts of it.
I just have to break in. What do you tell people who say it's more tax relief for the rich and corporations, and who cares about taxes through health savings accounts?
You know, it's not. He's not talking about lowering tax rates on the rich. Absolutely not. He wants to keep the tax rates where they are. He wants to prevent tax increases on people. He doesn't want to increase taxes on small business. You said I'm an economist, economics professor. I can't think of anything worse than raising taxes on anybody, especially businesses who create the jobs during a tough time, during a recession. And, as you know, Senator McCain mentioned last night how we increased taxes and restricted trade in the 1930s, and that turned a recession into really the Great Depression. So it's really a good point to mention. It's essential, and Senator Obama wants to raise those taxes.
John Taylor, thanks so much.